Budgeting is the most financially responsible thing most people will ever do. It is also exactly why they stay broke. Not because the math is wrong, the math is perfectly fine, but every time you open that spreadsheet and start allocating percentages, rent, groceries, savings, entertainment, you've already missed the moment that actually mattered. The real financial decision happened 3 weeks ago. Maybe while you were scrolling at midnight, maybe when a notification arrived at exactly the right moment of boredom. The budget is where you process the wreckage, not where you prevent it. Picture a boat, not a large one, something you could handle alone. Now picture a slow crack in the hull, not dramatic, just a steady seep of water along the keel, quiet and constant. Most people learn to bail. They get faster at it, more efficient. They buy better buckets, develop better routines, feel genuinely responsible about the whole operation. And from the outside, they look disciplined, like someone who has their finances together, because they do. They're bailing beautifully. But the crack is still there, the water keeps coming, and no one who has spent their life bailing a boat has ever called it freedom. That is what a budget is. It is an extremely well-organized way to manage a leak you were never supposed to have. And if you've spent years doing everything right, tracking, cutting, planning, and still feel like the number's never quite close, that's why. You've been bailing expertly, exhaustingly, and the hull is still open. What the genuinely wealthy internalize and almost never say out loud is that the real problem was never the spending. It was that the desire was accepted in the first place. Desire entered. You priced it into your identity, into your sense of what a good life looks like for you specifically. And now you're managing the consequences of that acceptance with a spreadsheet. The question no budget ever asks is, why do you want this? Not can you afford it, why do you want it? Where did that wanting come from? If that question has never been asked of you in a way that felt serious, the next several minutes might rearrange something. There's a chemical called dopamine, and almost everyone misunderstands it completely. Most people think dopamine is pleasure. It isn't. Dopamine is the anticipation of pleasure. It is the wanting, not the having, the seeking, not the arriving. And this distinction, as small as it sounds, is what quietly destroys most financial plans. Here's what actually happens inside your nervous system when you scroll past something desirable. Long before you've touched your wallet, before you've made any conscious decision at all, your brain has already registered it as a potential reward. Dopamine fires, the wanting is planted. It begins to occupy space in your identity, something you're moving toward, something that belongs to a better version of your life. It feels personal, it feels like yours. Budgeting enters only after this. It shows up to manage whether and when and how much you act on a desire that is already living inside you. The budget never touches the desire, it touches the behavior. And behavior management, when the desire underneath is genuine and strong, is a grinding, relentless game. Some months you win, the water stays low. But the crack is still there. Now consider a different question entirely. What if the desire never entered? This is the distinction that separates people who are always fighting their own impulses around money from people who almost never have to think about it. The difference isn't superior willpower. It's something that operates before willpower is ever required. It's the gate, the upstream decision. The moment before the want becomes load-bearing in your sense of self. Epictetus, a man who started his life as a slave and ended it as one of the most studied philosophers in human history, teaching in a school that emperors attended as students, said something that no financial advisor has ever quoted you. He said, if you wish to be rich, do not add to your money, subtract from your desire. He wasn't recommending poverty. He wasn't describing deprivation or asceticism or living without. He was making a structural observation that modern financial thinking has almost entirely inverted. The standard framework says, earn more, spend less, save the gap, budget everything in between. But Epictetus understood something those spreadsheets never capture. That desire, left unexamined, expands to fill whatever income is available. That you can earn 3 times more and still feel exactly as constrained, because your desires will quietly scale alongside your earnings without ever announcing they're doing it. The cage was never the spreadsheet. The cage was built the moment you accepted a desire as your own without asking where it came from. And here's why this is harder now than at any point in human history. The entire architecture of the modern consumer economy runs on exactly one mechanism: collapsing the distance between the wanting and the buying, and installing desire before your rational mind has time to evaluate it. Infinite scroll, one-click checkout, notifications engineered to arrive when your resistance is lowest. Flash sales that expire in 14 minutes, products designed not to be owned but to be longed for because longing is more profitable than satisfaction. None of this is accidental. It is the output of billions of dollars of behavioral science aimed specifically at the gap between stimulus and conscious decision. You are not failing at budgeting because you're undisciplined. You are failing because you're using a rational tool against a system that was specifically built to bypass rationality. The budget arrives after the infection. You're treating a fever with a calculator, and the fever keeps coming back because the exposure never stopped. So the cycle continues. You restrain, you relapse, you restrain harder. The guilt quietly compounds. You call it a discipline problem, read about discipline, build a slightly better spreadsheet. And somewhere in that cycle, usually somewhere very quiet, usually late at night, you start to wonder if this is just what adult financial life feels like, this particular weight. This permanent, exhausting gap between what you earn and what you somehow always need. It isn't. There is a practice that genuinely free people use, people who are not wealthy by accident but by structural design, and almost none of them have a name for it. I'm going to call it a desire audit, and it has nothing to do with sacrifice. A desire audit is not, can I afford this? That's bailing. A desire audit is, where did this want come from? Was I satisfied before I knew this thing existed? Would my life actually be diminished if I never encountered it again? Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, when you trace a desire back honestly, past the scroll, past the notification, past the moment it arrived, you find that it didn't originate in you. It was installed. It entered through a gap in your attention at a moment when you weren't watching the gate. And the moment you can see the installation, the moment you can trace the want back to its mechanism, the desire begins to lose its gravity. Not through suppression, not through willpower, simply through clarity. Because what you've seen clearly, you can no longer be fully fooled by. The hull gets sealed, not by effort, by sight. People who reach genuine financial independence almost never describe the experience as discipline. They describe it as lightness, as if something heavy fell away without a dramatic decision being made. They're not fighting desire, they don't have to. They develop the habit of watching desire arrive, of asking quietly before anything could harden into need, was this mine? Did I want this before they told me to? That paused 2 seconds, maybe 3, is the entire mechanism. Not a tighter budget, not a higher savings rate, not more income, just the gate asked honestly before the want becomes weight, and money stops being something you manage month by month. It simply accumulates not because you're extraordinarily disciplined, but because the pressure on the system is structurally lower. The boat floats the way it was always supposed to float. So budget if you need to, manage the water if there's water to manage, but know what you're actually doing, you're bailing. And there is a version of your financial life where the bucket retires, where freedom doesn't feel like restraint, where the math works not through heroic discipline, but through simple absence of unnecessary pressure. That version begins with one question, asked before you open the spreadsheet. Not can I afford this? Where did I learn to want this? The boat doesn't like until you let something through. Start watching the gate.